South Africa is facing criticism for abstaining from the UN General Assembly vote, demanding that Russia immediately withdraw from the Ukraine. 141 out of 193 member states voted for the non-binding resolution. South Africa was among the 35 countries that abstained, which just 5 voted against. Let's unpack the decision, the backlash and possible ramifications. I'm joined by Oscar van Heerden, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Fort Hare University. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. So the South African government says it abstained from a UN General Assembly vote to reprimand Russia because the resolution, and I quote, does not create an environment conducive for diplomacy, dialogue and mediation. Do you buy that explanation?
Well, you know, Sean, good evening and good evening to the viewers. The truth of the matter is that when we confront these kinds of situations, conflict, where there's loss of life and the likes, you know, usually there are roughly 3 areas that we take into consideration. There's a moral argument, an ethical argument, then there's a legality argument, international law, and of course there's a strategic arguments in terms of strategic interests. And the truth is that, of course, morally, I think South Africa should have been very clear in their vote, should have voted against an invasion. That is simply not the done thing. It's morally incorrect. It's ethically questionable. And of course, it is against international law. Strategically, however, there is a bit of a grey area with regards to Russia's sphere of influence. The clip that you played, for example, by the American ambassador to South Africa, is that, you know, he says in the clip, Russia started the war. And the truth is, Sean, that for the last umpteenth year, for many years now, Russia has been saying, please don't involve Ukraine in situations where we, as Russia, is going to feel that our national security is threatened. And so finally the day has arrived where the Russian government, Putin's administration, decided they've had enough.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit more about the strategy of South Africa when it comes to abstaining from this vote. And I know that the ambassador said that South Africa occupies a very special place when it comes to talking out about things like this. And as you say, he says that we should have taken a moral position when it comes to it. But strategically, I know you mentioned some of it. South Africa, of course, is part of BRICS. How much consideration does this country give when making a decision on something like that?
Look, I think a lot of people have been talking about the historical relations between South Africa, or better put, the Liberation Organization, the ANC, and Russia. But the truth is, as you say, Sean, that we are in a partnership with Russia, BRICS, and we do have trade relations with Russia. We also think that the government could potentially play a role in furthering dialogue, and I suspect that DIRCO felt that if they had voted for the resolution, they shut all those doors in terms of wanting to potentially be an honest broker when it comes to dialogue and negotiations, which of course the crisis will ultimately end up being.
That says a lot about our moral compass as a government and country, if that's the position we take regarding a war where we're seeing hundreds dead and hundreds of thousands fleeing.
Well, the thing is that the truth of the matter is, in the international relations system, Sean, we talk of duality. And there's a duality that exists morally, legally, as well as strategically. It is no accident that the ambassador should mention in passing some of the transgressions of the United States in recent years in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, and so forth. And yet the condemnation was absent. The legal issues were absent. The moral arguments were absent, or from very small quarters. And so this duality that exists in the international system is possibly also what informs the thinking of the South African government. Why is it that the lives of some is more valued than the lives of others? Why is it that a United States, together with some allies like the UK or Turkey or Saudi Arabia, justifies an illegal invasion into Afghanistan, into Iraq, and so on and so forth. So it's a complex issue, and I think that duality is what Russia and China and a few others are beginning to challenge.
Yeah. You know, many people will ask the question, why do we have to go into diplomatic talks when Russia is the country that basically targeted the Ukraine, flew in there, bombed areas, had their military surround the Ukraine through several borders? Why should we now talk about threats? Sorry, I have to ask. I know all of that happened, and I know that many people are saying it's one-sided the way it's being reported. Was Ukraine a threat to Russia at all? Because we did not hear of the Ukrainian President Zelensky at all threatening to take over any land in Russia, which is what we've heard from the Russian side. Also, let's not forget that Crimea was annexed by Russia. And that's the difference that we see in the two sides and how they operated in terms of security forces being on the ground.
But the Putin administration would argue that these were all telltale signs that begins to threaten and encroach on Russia. And that's why they simply had to act.
Interesting. All right. Thank you so much for your insight. Really do appreciate it. Oscar van Heerden, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Fort Hare University.